Hi, my name is Yulia, and you're definitely excited to see me again. You're excited to see me again. And this is the News Brief. Here we catch up with 4 to 6 news stories tailored by me, and in my humble opinion, the most relevant today. Then we discuss them in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. Please don't forget to leave your questions, suggestions, and commentary so we can continue tailoring the show to you. Let's get it. It wouldn't be a news brief if we didn't start it with Kursk. This Russian, or is it really still Russian oblast, has been the centerpiece of all news worldwide for quite some time now. But this is not the end. When it rains, it pours. President Zelensky says that Ukraine's Kursk region operation once seemed impossible. A few months ago, many around the world would have dismissed our plans for an operation in Kursk as unrealistic, crossing what were considered the reddest of Russia's red lines, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during a meeting of Ukraine's foreign diplomatic institutions titled Military Diplomacy, Stability, Weapons, Victory. Ukrainian soldiers continue their defensive operations in certain areas of the Kursk region. Today, our forces control over 1,250 square kilometers of enemy territory, including 92 settlements. If our partners lifted all long-range restrictions, Ukraine wouldn't need physical intervention in Kursk region to protect our citizens in border areas and dismantle Russia's aggression potential, Zelensky added. Now, when all of us heard about this incursion, all Ukrainian and European reporters immediately flocked to what has been deemed a newly liberated, do you catch my drift, Russian oblast, which, by the way, is mostly populated by Ukrainian speakers. Actually, Ukrainian speakers, not because they were forced to speak Ukrainian, but because historically, these lands were populated by Ukrainian speakers. And in fact, some of these lands, like Sudzha, for instance, used to be a part of Ukraine in 1918. But look at us. We are not trying to take it back to Ukraine and restore our historical lands. We are just trying to use it as a bargaining chip to restore our 1991 borders. Can you imagine that that's a thing that could be done? Wow, right? But I digress. American reporters have also started making their way to Russia to explore. Because, let's be realistic, when else can American reporters visit Russia without being held captive and turned into a POW? Following Italian reporters, American journalists also visited the Ukrainian-controlled territory of the Kursk region. According to the Washington Post, the reporters found no evidence of looting or attacks on civilians by the Ukrainian military. A dozen Russian civilians in Sudzha confirmed that they were treated well and were unaware of any residents being killed. Local women expressed gratitude to Ukrainian soldiers for providing medicine, food, and other assistance, though they did request anonymity due to fear of reprisals from Russian authorities. The soldiers also made sure to take care of the local dogs and cats. Interesting that Russian women are not scared of the invading Ukrainian military, but are scared of the Russian military that's supposed to liberate them from the invading Ukrainian military. Kind of odd. Doesn't compute, does it? The math ain't mathing. And it looks like the things in Kursk are only going to be heating up because German government denies rumors of limiting financial aid to Ukraine due to budget concerns. Wolfgang Buchner, the deputy official representative of the German government, dismissed rumors that Germany would reduce financial aid to Ukraine next year due to internal political challenges and federal budget issues. Quoted by Deutsche Welle, Buchner reiterated that Germany's commitment to supporting Ukraine remains unwavering. Also, in another article that we're not going to talk about in depth here today, Germany has stated that its biggest import and export partner from the post-Soviet satellites is now Ukraine. Germany is absolutely committed to its cause, Buchner said, reaffirming Chancellor Olaf Scholz's promise to support Ukraine for as long as needed. He emphasized that no one, especially the Russian president, should expect Germany to weaken its efforts. Buchner's remarks followed reports suggesting that Germany's aid to Ukraine in 2025 would be capped at 4 billion euros due to budget constraints. However, he clarified that Germany's dedication to helping Ukraine would not change. He also rejected claims that upcoming state parliamentary Landtag elections in eastern Germany were influencing the federal government's stance on Ukraine aid. He labeled such speculations as shameful. Additionally, Buchner refuted reports that the delivery of certain weapons, such as the Iris-T SLM air defense systems, was delayed due to financial reasons, calling these allegations false. I mean, we know that Russia loves fake news, as Donald Trump would say, though he would not say that about Russia, unfortunately. Danish weapons can be used on Russian territory, says Denmark's foreign minister. Ukraine's armed forces are permitted to use Danish-supplied weapons on Russian soil during their offensive in the Kursk region, according to Denmark's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Lars Løkke Rasmussen. Self-defense can indeed include taking action on the aggressor's territory. Attacking the aggressor's infrastructure or military facilities is entirely within the rules of war, Rasmussen stated. He further emphasized that the use of Danish weapons on Russian territory aligns with international war protocols. It is not feasible to impose a restriction where these weapons can only be used within Ukraine, Rasmussen clarified. I wish that most world leaders possessed this type of thinking and actually openly stated that to their audiences, which are the people and the electorate in their country, because in reality, defense also includes offense. This is an example I've given many, many times, but destroying Russian airfields and destroying Russian facilities defends Ukrainian civilians from quite literally being blown up asleep in their apartment when Russia decides to, I don't know, rain missiles and terror on us at 3 a.m. on a random Monday. Like, you know, all of the air alerts yesterday and some ballistics landing in Poltava. And if this statement wasn't sad enough for our dictator and his dreams of expanding the fallen Russian Empire, maybe this will be. Putin faces a nightmare scenario he never imagined, says former UK Foreign Secretary Malcolm Rifkind. Putin has always prided himself on ensuring Russia's security, but this war has turned into a disaster for him, stated Malcolm Rifkind, former UK Foreign Secretary. First, Sweden and Finland joined NATO, and now Ukrainian operation in Russia.
What's your take on this, I guess, minor spat, maybe it's a major spat between Zelensky and Western leaders about using weapons into Russian territory? Would the Storm Shadow missile be a game changer if he was able to use it? And how do you read whether the UK really does want them to be able to do so, and why at the moment they're not quite being permitted?
I think these are pretty sensitive issues. I think that the Ukrainians are already using a lot of British military equipment. They're doing incredibly well. They've put Putin into a position he never expected to be in. So I don't think the question of one further missile being used or not is going to make a significant difference. The Ukrainians are doing it very marvelously at the moment. All credit to them.
Do you think that this incursion into Russian territory is a game changer, and does Ukraine need to see it successfully continue for it to lead to?
Look, it's not by itself something that is going to defeat Russia, but it puts Putin into a position he never dreamt in his worst nightmares that he would be in, because the Ukrainians have shown the complete uselessness of the Russian armed forces. They have been able to occupy a substantial part of Russian territory. And Putin has always prided himself that the thing he does is provide security to Russia. Well, this war has been a disaster for him. The only change to NATO has been Sweden and Finland joining NATO, which they've never done for almost 70 years. And now he finds parts of Russia occupied by the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are being smart. They're saying we have no intention of staying here permanently. We don't want Russian territory. What we want them is to move out of Ukrainian territory. And that's exactly the line they should be taking.
I mean, I think Russia's security was pretty blown up when Russia wasn't secured at the border, and it was also pretty blown up when Russian National Guard and their military forces quite literally fled at the mere sight of Ukrainians. There are so many videos online of Russian civilians being confused. Well, happy to see Ukrainians because, you know, we brought food and water and just general necessities for Russian elderly who stayed in their homes. But being confused as to why they were not protected at all and complaining about the Russian military leaving immediately. That doesn't sound very secure to me. But what do I know about security? national security. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov rules out negotiations with Ukraine following offensive in Kursk region. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has dismissed the possibility of negotiations with Ukraine after the Ukrainian armed forces offensive into Kursk region. Lavrov stated that President Putin made it clear that there is no question of any negotiations with Kyiv following the invasion of the Kursk region. He also denied any rumors of ongoing contacts or negotiations with Ukraine. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the negotiations were ruled out, and there was no question in ruling out the negotiations with Moscow long before the recent faux pas in Russia's border protection. How about them being ruled out as a no-go on Ukraine's side because of systemic and systematic disregard of rules of law and warfare by Russia, with crimes like these, for instance? Take a look.
We found a 38-year-old woman and her daughters, 11 and 13, hiding in a basement in Avdiivka. They said they had no place to go. Finally, an order came to gag them, so they couldn't be heard.
Who gave that order?
The commander of our group, Omsk. We gagged all three of them with tape, and then, starting with the adult, we started assaulting them. 2 hours, that's all. Then we lined them up against the wall and shot them. On Lisna Street in Avdiivka, we found 2 women in the basement of a house. We surrounded them and interrogated them. We gagged them by order and began to assault them, 38 and 40 years old women. Then, after we took them to the basement, we found a 10-year-old child, a girl. We gagged her too, and we started raping her in front of the adults. Then, after the rape, then we lined them up against the wall and shot. 3 boys, 5 girls, 6 women.
Surely, everyone would want to negotiate with that. Anyways, on the other side of the world, in the US, the DNC, or the Democratic National Convention, was a hot, steaming success, with filling the convention space with a crowd of 23,000 people. We got to know the current and also the first second gentleman in history a little bit better.
This is my dad, Doug. He was raised in Jersey and moved to LA when he was 16. These are his parents, Barb and Mike. They think he walks on water. This is what he wore to his bar mitzvah. And here's him at summer camp. They voted him most athletic, so he says. This is a photo McDonald's used when he was Employee of the Month. It hung on our wall for years. My dad is a lawyer, a really good one. My mom called him the crisis guy because he was everyone's first call. My parents split when I was in middle school, and that wasn't easy. That's not easy for any kid. But it helped that my parents stayed friends, and we all kept hanging together. We grew closer than ever. And then he met Kamala, the blind date that would dramatically change all of our lives forever. It was my senior year of high school. Ella and I would laugh watching them fall in love, acting like teenagers. In 2014, Kamala became Mamala. She took over Sunday night dinners and taught Doug how to actually cook. Our blended family wasn't used to politics or the spotlight, but when Kamala became senator, we were all excited to step up, especially my dad. Then Kamala became vice president. It felt like Doug was a bit out of place on Capitol Hill. I thought, what is my goofy dad doing here? But he embraced it. He left his practice after being a lawyer for 30 years. That was tough. I was so proud to watch him do it, to stand by her side, an example of true partnership. I just got married myself, and he's inspired me as a new husband. Anyone who really gets close to him knows he's kind, loving, and fiercely protective.
Then we heard some wild roasts of Trump from the Obamas. Both Barack and Michelle's speeches were, how do I say this? For lack of a better word, fire.
It couldn't be more obvious. Of the 2 major candidates in this race, Only Kamala Harris truly understands the unseen labor and unwavering commitment that has always made America great. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Wait. I want to know who's going to tell him. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Yeah, that was great. But now we'll pass the mic to the 44th.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. The other day I heard someone compare Trump to the neighbor who keeps running his leaf blower outside your window every minute of every day.
I mean, there is really nothing like being a presidential candidate, being roasted by people who no longer have any stakes in the political game because they have already reached the top of it, aka having been a president for 2 terms. If I were Trump and I was watching this, I would probably literally cry. Or, in his case, wet his diaper. And of course, the DNC culminated with the current president, Joe Biden, stating this: "We will never bow to Putin." At the Democratic Party convention in Chicago, President Joe Biden declared that the US would never bow to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Referring to Putin's failed attempt to capture Kyiv in 3 days, Biden proudly stated, 3 years later, Ukraine is still free. Well, I mean, I do have some comments here. We likely, as the United States, and I know I say we for both Ukraine and the US, but what are you going to do if you're a Ukrainian citizen born and raised here and you feel like this is home, but then you've also lived in the United States for 13 years and are very politically motivated and interested and also feel like that is home? So anyways, I think we in the United States will in fact bow to Putin if Trump becomes president. So maybe let's not let that happen. And as to 3 years later, Ukraine still being free, yeah, our hearts are free. Most of our regions are free, but some of them are occupied, temporarily occupied by Russia. And people live in fear, people live through torture, and people live in open-air concentration camps because there is no better way to describe them. They're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to call their relatives. They're not allowed to speak Ukrainian. They're not allowed to live freely. And I think it's important to not forget that. We're also not free from missile terror, and we need more air defense. And I will never be tired of stating that on air so no one forgets that we do, in fact, need better air defense. In this keynote address, Biden emphasized the importance of U.S. leadership on the global stage, highlighting the success of his administration in strengthening alliances, particularly within NATO, and confronting Russia and China. He noted his efforts in uniting Europe and praised the expansion of NATO with the addition of Sweden and Finland. Biden also mentioned ongoing diplomatic efforts to secure a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and reassured that if Kamala Harris is elected, and I sure hope she will, the current foreign policy direction will continue. And I hope it's also going to strengthen. It does look like Kamala's rumored advisors are much more strict on Russia and much more supportive of Ukraine. So I really do hope that the policy is not only going to continue, but is also going to strengthen, because we need it and the world needs it. Unsurprisingly, reiterating my comments about Ukraine not being free from missile terror on a random Monday at 3 a.m., Russia struck again. This time at Children's Cafe. The Ukrainian Air Force has shared details about the latest Russian night attack on Ukraine. The attack involved 2 ballistic Iskander MKN-23 missiles, a Kh-59 Kh-69 air-launched missile, a 69 Shahed-type attack drone, and 69 Shahed-type attack drones. During the anti-aircraft battle, Ukrainian forces successfully shot down 51 air targets, including 1 Kh-59 Kh-69 missile and 50 Shahed drones. Additionally, 16 hostile UAVs were neutralized by radio-electronic countermeasures, causing them to crash. Further information is still being updated because that was last night. But that reminds me, in the previous episode, we talked about how, Russian propaganda has, again, seeped into Western publications, and Western press cannot wait to blame Ukraine for absolutely everything. And in one of those publications, they said that, Russia is preparing this awful, awful, massive attack on Ukrainian territory that is going to include about 100 UAVs and missiles and all of these flying objects at Ukraine, and our air defense is going to be absolutely overwhelmed and will not be able to handle it. And we're supposed to be scared of it because we have never seen an attack this big before. Well, this was pretty similar. It was 69 UAVs and about 10 missiles total. That's 79. That happens to us every other day. Boo-hoo. Not that I like it, not that I'm saying that this should continue happening, I'm just saying that threatening us with a massive missile attack is not that threatening when you live through it every other night, A 15-year-old boy injured in the Russian shelling of Malokaterynivka, Zaporizhia, has tragically died in the intensive care unit. And that is the consequence, one of many consequences, of the missile attack of Russia on a children's cafe. Yes, a children's cafe, because of course these children were probably military units in training, and each one of them definitely has a missile and a grenade and a tank hiding in their bedroom under their bed, right? The attack on the children's cafe Levada left 5 people injured, including 4 children. I genuinely have no more comments left for that. But I do have a comment on this. As a result of such terror and other Russia's attacks on Ukraine, Ukraine is forced to once again ask NATO countries for more help. Ukraine urgently requested NATO countries for critical civil engineering, medical, and fire equipment. Ukraine has made an urgent request to NATO countries through the Euro-Atlantic Coordination Center for essential civil engineering, medical, and fire equipment. The requested items include 10 tracked and 10-wheeled important excavators, 30 tractors with trailers capable of transporting goods of up to 100 tons, 25 reserved sanitary vehicles, 27 fire vehicles. And on that note, I will personally ask you, if you're in the UK or maybe if you're outside of the UK, to donate to FireAid. FireAid is a UK organization I've learned about maybe a month or 2 ago by accident, and I will tell you the story in a minute. FireAid provides not only fire trucks to Ukraine, but also provides servicing of these fire trucks for their lifetime. It's a nonprofit stemming from the UK, and they're fantastic. First of all, they've explained that the fire trucks that were made to serve in Europe fit Ukraine's city engineering and streets a lot better than fire trucks that are coming from the US and Canada. They tend to be a lot more bulky and a lot harder to navigate and steer through Ukrainian cities that follow more of a European layout. But there is also an amazing story around how I found out about the existence of this amazing organization and all of the awesome people that help support it on the ground. About a month ago, I was coming back from Lviv on the train, and we were almost back to Kyiv when a random gentleman walked in, and I saw a bag on him that said, "Press," in English. That's a dead giveaway for a foreigner. And then he picked up a phone call, and I heard English, and I was like, that is someone from the UK. That man then turns around to me and goes, "I know you." Not creepy at all. But, you know, I love some danger for me, so I was like, oh, from where? So turns out he subscribed to my personal Instagram and TikTok and has been watching my political videos for a while, also emailed me to help him translate something, but I'm really bad at reading my emails, so I didn't see it. Anyways, we started talking and now we're friends, and he had told me about fire aid because that is one of the things that he does in Ukraine, apart from being a photojournalist. He helps fire aid, makes sure that fire trucks are maintained and that fire departments get what they need. So I can personally vouch for this organization, and I think that if you give them a look and give a read of what they do, you will be inclined to help them out as well. And those 27 fire vehicles that Ukraine has requested might be able to come from the UK. So yeah, I just wanted to share this personal story because I love it when I meet amazing people on trains in Ukraine and when they're so essential to making this country better and helping this country. But back to NATO. I invite you to listen to Czech President Petr Pavel's speech on why Ukraine should and should have been already a member in NATO, not just ask the alliance to step up all the time. In an interview with Novinky a Pravo, Czech President Petr Pavel suggested that Ukraine's accession to NATO should not be contingent on regaining full control over its entire territory. Pavel stated that in the coming years, Ukraine might reach a peace agreement with Russia, potentially allowing Russia to retain control over some Ukrainian territory temporarily. However, he emphasized that democratic states would not recognize any change to Ukraine's borders based on aggression. I believe that a full restoration of control over the entire territory is not a necessary condition for NATO membership. He suggested that if an administrative border is established, NATO could still consider Ukraine's membership based on the territory it controls at that time, citing the example of Germany's division during the Cold War. Despite part of Germany being occupied by the Soviet Union, West Germany was accepted into NATO in 1955. Pavel also noted that after both sides recognized the futility of continued conflict, negotiations could begin with significant contributions from global powers like the United States, China, and the European Union. Pavel also added that democratic countries should treat Russian-occupied Ukrainian territories as temporarily occupied until Ukraine's full sovereignty is restored. And I could not agree more with this statement because it seems like Ukraine is always special. But it's not special in a way where we get special treatment. No, it's special in a way where we get the most special excuses as to why we shouldn't be in the EU, as to why we can be accepted into NATO, as to why Russia is the largest aggressor on Earth right now and is still somehow prevailing over the Security Council in the UN, as to why we shouldn't be able to use our weapons on Russia's territory, as to why Russia can get away with crimes against humanity, as to why Russia can get away with war crimes. We get all of these excuses. And when people cite the excuse of Ukraine not being able to join NATO because our territory is not defined, oh no, it's very defined by 1991 borders, but also, you know, the example of the West Germany is very pertinent and a very good one to dispute that claim. Ukraine should be a member to NATO. NATO was created as a protective alliance and arguably to protect the world against the Soviet Union and, well, now modern Russia. And you know what? Modern times call for modern solutions. What's the point of NATO's existence if we cannot adapt the rules of being accepted into NATO to the current world environment? NATO was created almost 100 years ago. Maybe it's time to, you know, revamp the rules a little bit, kind of to have them fit modernity? No, just me? Anyways, while you think of an answer to this question, I'm going to go and prepare for the next episode because that's all I have for you for tonight. I will see you next with this segment on Tuesday, but on this channel with a new interview on Saturday. But before that, please don't forget to follow the Gaze, G-A-Z-E, the channel, comment on this video and give it a like so it has an easier time being spread into the masses. And I will see you next time.